Stark Iron Man campaign. And one of the things Stark AI. He
Among
in the
Us
middle of the proceedings,
बड़ा
and when
secret
Iron Man is
terminal
attacked by a bizarre android comprised of the fused bodies of Vision and Wonder Man, the AI is there to help him. Unfortunately, knows the only thing that will stop the android is an EMP cluster, which will also kill off the AI. The AI tells him to go through with it anyway, sacrificing himself. But that's not all. Since the beginning of Tony Stark Iron Man, Tony and his colleagues have been dealing with the notion of whether or not artificial intelligence deserve the same rights as humans. While Stark is testifying, there are AI-driven robots protesting in the streets. And his EMP cascade kills all of them as well. With the deaths of Kid Loki and Valkyrie, the Asgardians of the Galaxy arguably suffer more than any other superhero team in Marvel's War of the Realms event. Asgardians of the Galaxy number 10, the series finale, takes one more victim from the Asgardians' ranks, as Scourge the Executioner makes a last stand that is brimming with dark irony. Scourge was freshly resurrected when he joined the Asgardian Christ, as his previous death. 1985 classic Thor number 3. Trying to escape hell. This time around, however, Scourge's foes are much different. The angels of heaven inexplicably side with the dark elf Malekith in War of the Realms, and Scourge ends up joining fellow Asgardian Angela in heaven itself. Once there, Scourge holds off the angels to give Angela the time to summon an army of undead Asgardian warriors. Ironically, having died his first death against an army of the dead, Scourge dies his second death helping to summon another army of the dead to his side. After he succumbs to his wounds and the battle is won, Scourge awakes in Valhalla, the realm of the honored dead. Valhalla's other residents greet him warmly, and when he insists he hasn't earned a place among them, they tell him they all thought the same thing when they got there. Dark Beast is a version of Hank McCoy from an alternate reality based on the 1995 Age of Apocalypse event. And to be fair, he wasn't much of a superhero. Nevertheless, he's been working with the X-Men since Cyclops returned from the dead and started putting a new team together in Uncanny X-Men number 11. In Uncanny X-Men number 20, Dark Beast inadvertently turns on his benefactors, thinking he's helping them.
A lot that happens between the unification of Wakanda and the 20th century. The first big event that we...
Simon and Joe both invest in stocks. Simon uses eToro to invest in stocks without paying commission. Joe has to pay his bank a commission. So why is Joe just as good an investor as Simon? He's not, because Simon uses eToro and Joe doesn't. Download eToro and invest in stocks without paying commission.
we see in the movies is the arrival of, well, the first Avenger. In 1942, a Nazi officer known as the Red Skull creates a splinter group called Hydra. With the discovery of one of the Infinity Stones, he creates a technologically advanced army of his own. That same year, Steve Rogers volunteers for an experimental attempt at creating a super soldier, using a technique created by Dr. Abraham Erskine. The project works, giving Steve the body of Marvel's hunkiest Chris. When Erskine is assassinated, the research is lost. Rather than risking their only super soldier by sending him to fight in the war, the Army gives Steve the codename Captain America and uses him primarily as a spokesman to sell war bonds. Eventually, Steve becomes an active soldier in the war, leading a strike team called the Howling Commandos. On one of their missions, his best friend Bucky falls from a train in the mountains. Steve believes him to be dead, but he's actually taken into custody by the Soviet Army and brainwashed into becoming a super assassin, codenamed Winter Soldier. After attempting to use the Tesseract, the Red Skull is sucked into a wormhole and somehow winds up on the distant planet Vormir, serving as a sort of guardian for the Soul Stone. As for Steve, he crashes a bomber jet into the Arctic to keep Hydra from destroying New York. He's also presumed dead, but survives, suspended animation. Things are pretty quiet for the MCU between 1940 the first graduates of its brutal Red Room facility, where orphaned girls are trained as spies and assassins. Sometime shortly after this, Steve Rogers travels back in time from 2023 to reunite with Peggy. She continues to work in military intelligence for the next few decades with Stark, whose defense contracts turned Stark Industries into the world's leading arms manufacturer. By 1970, both of them were working out of SSR headquarters at Camp Lehigh, along with a few other notable figures, including Arnim Zola. His body dies in 1972, and his brain is transferred into a computer data bank that continues Hydra's infiltration of the government. Also, Hank Pym is working here, assisted by Bill Foster in his experiments with the size-changing Pym particles that will allow him and his wife Janet Van Dyne to become the original Ant-Man and Wasp. In 1974, Howard Stark launches the Stark Expo, displaying the city of the future, powered by a clean energy arc reactor that's about the size of a house. For some reason, he also hides the structure of a new element in the arrangement of the buildings, which is the kind of science it pays to not think too hard about. In 1980, Ego comes to Earth, winning the heart of Meredith Quill, and 9 months later, her son Peter is born. In 1987, Janet Van Dyne is lost in the quantum realm after she and Hank Pym attempt to stop a rogue Soviet missile targeting the United States. In 1988, Meredith Quill dies from brain cancer, intentionally caused by Ego, leaving her son a mixtape of classic rock favorites before she dies. Peter is then abducted by a band of outer space outlaws called the Ravagers, who give him a pretty terrible childhood.
Yondu was the guy who abducted me, kicked the crap out of me so I could learn to fight, and kept me in terror by threatening to eat me. Eat you? Yeah.
In 1989, Pym resigns from the SSR after finding out that they intended to use his Pym particles to create weapons. The organization has also now been renamed the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
That's like a mouthful. I know. We're working on it.
Also that year, Air Force Captain Carol Danvers, who uses the call sign Avenger, volunteers for a test flight of a light-speed engine powered by the Tesseract. When they're shot down by the Kree, a militaristic alien race constantly at war with the shape-shifting Skrulls, Carol's body is overloaded with the Tesseract's energy, giving her incredible powers and also wiping her memory. A Kree soldier named Yang Rog abducts her and takes her back to his homeland, Kala. Pierce is made to believe that she's actually a Kree named Gears. Meanwhile, while all of this is happening on Earth, things continue to develop in space. Thanos, an incredibly powerful alien from the planet Titan, who's obsessed with balance, begins to seek out the Infinity Stones, laying waste to half of the population of entire planets. He also occasionally abducts young survivors, training them as soldiers. Assuming that most of the more humanoid characters are around the same age as the people portraying them, then his two most notable adoptions happen in the late 80s or early 90s, Gamora and Nebula. Every time the two sisters spar, Gamora wins, and Thanos systematically replaces pieces of Nebula's body with cybernetic parts. In 1991, the Soviet government sends the Winter Soldier to assassinate Howard and Maria Stark, making it look like a car accident. Their brilliant slacker son Tony is left in charge of Stark Industries, along with Obadiah Stane as CEO. Unbeknownst to Tony, Stane makes a tidy profit from secret arms deals with terrorist groups. In 1992, King T'Chaka of Wakanda goes to Oakland, California to investigate arms deals involving stolen vibranium. The culprit is his brother N'Jobu, who is killed in the altercation. N'Jobu's son Eric is a witness to the whole thing and grows up craving revenge. In 1995, Carol Danvers, still without her memories of Earth, returns to her home planet after escaping from the Skrulls. She teams up with S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Nick Fury and Phil Coulson to stop the Skrulls from invading Earth. It turns out that the Kree are the bad guys, with Yang-Rog and Ronan the Accuser en route in search of the Infinity Stones that will end their war of conquest once and for all. Finally, at full power, Carol fights them off, and in the process, an alien cat scratches Nick Fury's left eye, blinding it and causing him to sport a fashionable eye patch for the rest of the franchise. Before she journeys back into space, Carol gives Fury a pager that can summon her in case of a dire emergency. Inspired by Carol and her original call sign, Fury lays the groundwork for the Avengers Initiative, a program designed to create a team of superpowered heroes to deal with large-scale threats like alien invasions. In 1999, Tony Stark meets bioengineers Maya Hansen and Aldrich Killian at a conference in Bern, Switzerland. He's very rude to Aldrich, who remembers that as a sore point for about 14 years. Throughout all of this, Hydra continues its secret infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all levels of the United States government. In 2008, we finally catch up to the MCU as it happens. Tony Stark is demonstrating his newest weapons in the Middle East when he's kidnapped by a terrorist organization called the Ten Rings, in what will eventually be revealed as a plot by Stane to get Tony out of the picture. While he's imprisoned, the terrorists force him and another captive, Dr. Ho Yinsen, who was also at that fateful 1999 convention in Bern, to make weapons for them. Instead, Tony is able to recreate a miniaturized arc reactor, using it to stabilize a piece of shrapnel that's lodged near his heart.
It's impossible.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
The reactor also powers the Iron Man, a suit of weaponized armor built from scrap, which allows Tony to escape after Jensen's death. He returns to America, eats a cheeseburger, refines his design, and wipes out the Ten Rings in a brutally effective display of the Iron Man weapons. He also defeats Stane, who attempts to kill Tony and creates his own massive suit of powered armor. Tony then publicly reveals his identity.
I am Iron Man.
Which causes Nick Fury to approach him about the Avengers Initiative. Around the same time as Tony's capture, Dr. Bruce Banner is working on recreating the Super Soldier program. Instead of Erskine's Vita Rays, he uses gamma radiation, testing it on himself and turning himself into a rampaging green monstrous Hulk whenever he gets angry, which is always. After the Hulk inadvertently injures Banner's girlfriend Betty Ross, he attempts to go underground but returns to America in search of a cure for his condition. He winds up dealing with a scientist named Samuel Stearns, whose attempt to recreate the Hulk turns Special Forces soldier Emil Blonsky into the monstrous abomination.
Your idea is waiting to be seen. Put it all on display with a beautiful website from GoDaddy. Connect your social media and grow it all with insight. GoDaddy Websites Plus Marketing. Start for free today at GoDaddy.com.
6 months after revealing his identity publicly, Tony Stark is called to testify before Congress because they are justifiably concerned about a private citizen building a suit of armor that can vaporize a tank. To create their own version, they turn to rival weapons manufacturer Justin Hammer. After Tony's friend, Colonel James Rhodes, delivers a prototype Iron Man suit, Hammer and Russian scientist Anton Vanko reverse engineer them into an army of militarized drones. Stark also gets a new personal assistant who is revealed to be S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and Red Room defector Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow. Rhodes gets his own suit of armor, codenamed War Machine, and he and Tony team up to defeat Vanko and Hammer. Speaking of hammers, while all this is happening on Earth, there's other stuff going on in the Golden Realm of Asgard. Loki tricks Thor into antagonizing the Frost Giants against Odin's orders. As a consequence, Odin exiles Thor to Earth and enchants his hammer Mjolnir.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
It lands in New Mexico, where Agent Coulson discovers it, and a bunch of locals try to yank it out of the ground with pickup trucks. Thor eventually proves himself worthy, regains his hammer, and stops Loki from staging a coup in Asgard. In 2011, the crashed hydroplane is discovered in the Arctic. S.H.I.E.L.D. thaws out Captain America, and after realizing that he's in the 21st century, he teams up with Nick Fury's Avengers Initiative. It turns out he was just in time. In 2012, Loki, last seen adrift in space after his failed coup in Asgard, is enlisted by Thanos to recover the Tesseract from Earth. In exchange, Thanos gives him control of the Chitauri, a massive army of hive-minded destroyers. Loki agrees because he's apparently in one of his moods that day. The result is the Battle of Manhattan, in which the Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, and Hawkeye, are gathered for the first time as a team. The good guys win after Loki is smashed against the ground a lot, but the battle is extremely destructive. The reconstruction is mostly handled by the newly formed Department of Damage Control, who take over the lucrative contract and leave construction foreman Adrian Toombs embittered and in possession of advanced technology. In 2013, Tony Stark is left with post-traumatic stress as a result of the battle, and his concept of the universe suddenly expanding to include gods, aliens, and other unknowable cosmic forces. Unfortunately, this coincides with the return of Aldrich Killian, who has been experimenting with Maya Hansen's regenerative extremis treatment, which has a tendency to cause its subjects to explode. To cover his operations, Killian creates a fictional terrorist called the Mandarin, hiring an actor named Trevor Slattery to play him in threatening videos. Needless to say, Tony and Rhodey stop Killian's plot after they uncover the truth.
You want something? Take it. Although the guns are all fake, because those wankers wouldn't trust me with the real ones.
What?
Hey, do you fancy either of the birds?
Also, Malekith comes back and Thor fights him, and Loki becomes the latest in a long line of presumed deaths that actually aren't. He stashes Odin in a retirement home in New York, and then takes his identity, ruling over Asgard and putting on critically acclaimed plays for the next 2 years. In 2014, Hydra's decades-long plot to infiltrate and take over America is finally discovered by Captain America and Black Widow.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
They also learn that the Winter Soldier is Bucky Barnes. While Cap fights to restore his best friend's memories, the Hydra plot is exposed, and in the aftermath, S.H.I.E.L.D. collapses, leaving the Avengers without the oversight and support of the larger organization. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner then attempt to recreate an artificial intelligence that would help protect the world. Unfortunately, they goofed that plan up big time, instead creating a genocidal robot named Ultron who winds up destroying an entire country, Sokovia. Tony and Banner decide that if at first you don't succeed, make another robot and hope he's not genocidal. They use the Soul Stone to transform Tony's onboard AI, Jarvis, into a much more heroic AI called the Vision. In the fight that follows, the Hulk hijacks a Quinjet and blasts off into space, landing on Sakaar. Also, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, two definitely not mutants, join the team. Quicksilver immediately dies, partly from bullets, but mostly because Disney and Fox were having a fight over who had the character's film rights. The destruction of Sokovia also kills the family of Helmut Zemo, who then dedicates his life to revenge.